a fatal error by Donald Trump and his regime trying to pick on Canada. And
remember when Joe Biden used to always go, I need legislation. I had no legislation. I just said we're closing the borders, and the whole world understood it because they respect your country again. They really respect this country again. They didn't respect it. When he said it, it didn't mean anything. But now they know it meant a lot. And Mexico does what we tell them to do, and Canada does what we tell them to do, because we have the two borders. We have the northern border, southern border, and they were both horrible. But now it's some people say it's a miracle.
And our European allies as well. Like any bully, as Donald Trump tried to punch our allies and they fight back, Donald Trump then acts like he's the victim, and his regime and the officials in his regime say, why are you bullying us? Why are you picking on us? I want to show you examples of where that's happening, where our European allies are standing up against Donald Trump, and I want to talk about what's happening in Canada as well, because the United States ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, just finished an interview with someone by the name of Jasmine Lane. She's a right-wing podcast host in Canada. She hosts a show called Over Opinionated with Jasmine Lane. And so Pete Hoekstra, Trump's ambassador to Canada, went on that show, and he said that Canada is incredibly vindictive and mean, and that everything that's happening basically is Canada's fault. And he goes, the United States is treating Canada very nicely, but why is Canada bullying us? They're so mean, he's saying. Here, play this clip.
I can't. And I've said this, and a number of people have asked me, well, Pete, don't you understand the anger that we have to Donald Trump? And I've got to be fairly honest with them and say, people have tried to explain it to me, but no, I really don't quite understand the passionate anger that you have towards Donald Trump and that you have towards the United States of America. We're your biggest customer. We're continuing to buy your goods and services. We are, we haven't been vindictive through this whole process, but Canadians have. And, now I'm going to hear, ambassador calls Canadians vindictive. Well, when you ban our products, when your provinces say, we're going to buy from everybody but America, that doesn't seem very constructive, especially when Americans, and you say, we're not going to travel to America. That doesn't seem, very constructive, especially when the other side is not doing the same thing. Well, let's just leave it there, okay?
And then he doubles down on this podcast and says, we're being way nicer to Canada. Here, play this clip.
I would maybe add, we've been nicer to Canada at this point than Canada has been to the U.S.
And then Hoekstra complains about Canada's retaliatory tariffs against the United States. And he says this is calling into question CUSMA, the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement, also sometimes referred to as the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. And here, what seems to be happening is the U.S. ambassador to Canada is blaming Canada for the current trade issues and threatening them that the United States is going to pull out of CUSMA, the free trade agreement that Donald Trump announced during his first administration. So it seems that they're just, the Trump regime is just setting up a pretext to pull out of CUSMA. But you tell me what you think. Here, play this clip.
Some of the retaliatory tariffs to the U.S. Are a huge irritant. We have protected the integrity of CUSMA. Okay, our negotiators have said we are not going to implement tariffs on any products that are covered under CUSMA. Canadians have said those guardrails are off. Canada is calling into question the future of CUSMA. It's not the United States of America. It's Canada.
And again, it's just constant whining over here from Pete Hoekstra, the ambassador to Canada. Just watch this from this interview with Jasmine Lane and tell me what you think in the comments below. Again, our podcast is called Over Opinionated with Jasmine Lane. Here, play this clip.
I think since April, they have been tariffing U.S. products that are part of the CUSMA agreement. All right, that's a huge irritant. Okay, the products that are covered under CUSMA are they're going into the U.S. tariff-free, and the ones going north are covered or now have this, I think, 25% tariff on them. Okay, and so what it means is, I know from American companies, they're saying, hey, we're basically going into Canada and we can't sell because we've got a 25% tariff, while our Canadian competitors are coming into the U.S. with no tariffs at all. You put that together with the actions of your provinces where they're saying, in certain cases, they're saying, all right, we're going to first buy Canadian product. If there's not a Canadian product available, we're first buying product from our province. If the product from our province is not available, we are going to buy Canadian. If there's not a Canadian product available, we're going to buy international. And if there's not an international product available, then we may finally consider buying American, or maybe not buying at all. Okay, I think that the Canadians have gone on those issues. They've gone significantly further than where the U.S. has gone. Canada is calling into question the future of CUSMA. It's not the United States of America. It's Canada that has questioned the integrity of that program. The F-35s. Canada had committed to buying 88. Now they're saying we're buying 16. The other 72 are up for review. Basically, from an American standpoint, they've canceled 70. They've canceled those orders. They're probably still going to buy 72 airplanes, but if they're going to buy F-35s, we have to rebid that contract to actually win and get them to buy F-35s. Bottom line is, we love the Canadian military, but an Air Force the size of the Canadian Air Force, you can't have two different fighter jets. Okay, the cost of training, maintaining, they have two different places in terms of how they're stored, and you can't afford two different fighter jet programs. And it's like Canada should just decide what they want. Do they want F-35s? Do they want some other product? That's your decision to make, but you can't afford both of them.
Another portion right here where you'll see him, I guess, continue down this path. Let's play it.
I think some of the rhetoric that has come out. Okay, I think our American negotiators have the utmost respect for your prime minister, for your premiers, for your negotiating team, and we have done nothing but treat them with the utmost respect that the leaders of our northern neighbor and our friend that they deserve. They were elected and selected by the leadership of the Canadian people. American leaders, specifically Donald Trump, has not received the same kind of respect from the Canadians, from certain government officials, from the media, and those types of things. So, I think there's some irritants that make it perhaps make it more difficult for the negotiators when they get into the room.
And ultimately what he says is, we're waiting on Canada. Why aren't they sending us proposals? They just need to give us a great offer, and maybe we'll listen. But they need to send us offers. Here, play this clip.
But it was very clear. The president said, give me a proposal. Put a proposal in front of me. And I think that continues to be pretty much the case. And, for the deals that he has signed, at least, reading some of the background on that, the countries that get to agreements, they've put together a package, a proposal to the president and his team that gets close enough to what the president believes is a preferable outcome, that he comes back and says, okay, I think we're close, bring that one home. I'm not in the negotiations with the president and the prime minister and those teams. It's a very close held relationship. All the negotiations are, I think, have been conducted in privacy. There's been very few, if any, leaks. I think that is great. I think that the president and his team continue to probably look for concrete proposals from the Canadians that would say, we're close, let's bring it home.
Now, the full interview over there, it's about 41 minutes in length, is over on Jasmine Lane's site. Those were just some of the portions that I found to be, just seeing this guy. I mean, look, Donald Trump went in, started calling Canada the 51st state. Donald Trump went in and started saying that he wants to take over Canada. Donald Trump declared the trade war against Canada, not the other way around. And people in Canada said, we need to defend ourselves. I think at first the people in Canada were like, all right, is he joking? What's going on? And like, no, holy crap, he's coming for us. He's coming for us. Thus, elbows up, and that movement, took place. And I just don't think people in Canada, we know from the Maple Midas, they see the way even Pete Hoekstra is talking about Canada and the level of gaslighting. It's incredibly offensive, in my opinion. I want to talk about Europe standing up as well to Donald Trump's fatal error of trying to cut Europe out from trade negotiations and discussions. First, let me give you some stats right here as well. As Canadians steer clear of the United States, as travel from the north falls for the 7th month, the number of return road and air trips continues to fall after trade policy row and threats to annex country. Statistics Canada said on Monday that the number of Canadian residents who made a return trip to the U.S. by car dropped 36.9% in July 2025 compared with the same month in 2024. There were declines in air travel as well, where Canadian residents returning from the U.S. by commercial airlines dropped 25.8% in July compared with the previous year. We also told you about how the equivalent of the Canadian Girl Scouts, they've canceled all of their trips to the United States. I've done lots of reporting about how places like Las Vegas, which depend heavily on Canada for revenue, they're suffering basically recessions in those states right now, and Canada's inspired a boycott from the rest of the world as well. Let's talk about Europe. So obviously Donald Trump tried to cut Europe and Zelensky out of Trump's one-on-one with Putin in Alaska, which is set to take place on Friday. That's going to take place at an American military base there. But the European allies stood up to Donald Trump. They said, let's be very clear, Donald, you ain't making a deal without Europe agreeing to it and Ukraine agreeing to it. Especially, Ukraine makes the decision. So the European countries, led by French President Emmanuel Macron, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the head of the European Council, Antonio Costa, and others, came together and they said, look, we're drawing a line in the sand, Donald. Here are our terms. So here's what Macron said about a virtual meeting that took place yesterday, and Trump joined a portion of this, where Zelensky and Europe just laid out the demands. And Macron said, look, excellent meeting today with our European partners and President Trump ahead of his upcoming meeting with Putin on August 15th in Alaska. Unity and strong alignment with our allies on these priorities. Nothing about Ukraine should be decided without the Ukrainians. A ceasefire is the essential prerequisite for any negotiations. These negotiations must lead to a solid and lasting peace with security guarantees, ensuring Ukraine's sovereignty and the stability of our continent. We all agree that until a ceasefire and the lasting peace are achieved, our support for Ukraine will remain unwavering, meaning until these terms are met, we ain't going nowhere and Ukraine is not going to submit. I thank all my partners and Trump for their commitment and determination. In the coming days, we will continue our close coordination with Trump and Zelensky and with all partners of the coalition of the willing, fully mobilized for peace and security in Europe. You see right there Macron, you see right there Acosta, the head of the European Council. You see Zelensky on screen. You see Frederick Merz on TV as well. Antonio Costa, who leads the European Council president. He says, very useful calls today on Ukraine with Trump and Zelensky and European leaders ahead of the important bilateral meeting in Alaska. The European Union is determined to work closely and in unity with the U.S. to end Russia's war of aggression and secure a just and lasting peace. We stand ready to do our part. Achieving a ceasefire remains the priority as a necessary step toward meaningful negotiations with Ukraine. In other words, step one, an actual ceasefire across the board, not Ukraine giving up territory. Everybody puts down their weapons. Ukraine is in agreement with that. Russia, let's call your bluff. You want to end the war, which they don't. Agree to a ceasefire. Russia will never agree to it because Zelensky's always been agreeable to a ceasefire and Putin hasn't. Tomorrow yesterday, whatever. Zelensky says, I'm good. We can stop. It's Putin who goes, now we're pressing forward and we need all of Ukraine. We need all of Ukrainian territory. Then you had Donald Trump at that bizarre press conference yesterday that he had at the Kennedy Center where he was announcing like award nominees for this award ceremony taking place in December. And like he's like, I picked all of the award nominees, like Sylvester Stallone. It was weird. He had like two women there wearing like evening gowns. But then he also talked about Russia and Zelensky. The whole thing was very strange. So Donald Trump is asked about the reporting that Russia has been hacking the United States computer systems and federal court dockets. And Trump is asked, are you concerned that Russia has hacked? Have you heard that? And Donald Trump's like, of course they hack. They're Russia. That's just what they do. Seriously, that's what he says. Here, play this clip.
Hi, sir. There's new reporting that the Russians have hacked into some computer systems that manage U.S. federal court documents. I wonder if you've seen this reporting and if you plan to bring it up with Putin when you see him later in the week.
I guess I could. I mean, are you surprised? Are you surprised? They hack in. That's what they do. They're good at it. We're good at it. We're actually better at it. But no, I have heard about it. I've heard about it.
Could you just imagine if former President Biden or Obama was asked about a foreign country hacking and the response is, that's just what they do. It's all good. We hack them. They hack us. Everyone's hackers these days. Really? Maybe stand up for the sovereignty of the United States and push back. And then Donald Trump was asked, will Russia face any consequences if they don't agree to stop the war on Friday? And then Donald Trump says, yes. Okay, well, what are those consequences? And then Trump says, I'm not going to tell you. Well, you said sanctions would happen very soon, back in, March or April, then in 2 weeks, then in 60 days, then in a few days, then in a few weeks. Now it's, I'm not going to tell you.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will those consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences, yes.
There you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get you 6 million subscribers together, and thank you for watching.